Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the trailer that just dropped on Netflix's adaptation of Death Note. Now, obviously, if you haven't seen the trailer, I'll include a link in the description or a card, whichever one you prefer, so you can check it out for yourself. Now, immediately, I'm just going to, run down my thoughts on it and everything. I will go ahead and say from the very beginning, I'm very interested. Well, before that, I should probably say like my experience with Death Note. I've watched the anime. I've never read the manga though. I do know there are some differences here and there. I remember reading about years ago, but I've never actually taken time to read the manga. I think I've seen the first Death Note movie. I vaguely remember it, but I don't think I ever saw the second one. I do know there is a third one that's kind of a spin-off. It's kind of a continuation, but it's also a spin-off that I'm not really going to talk about it too much because, I mean, obviously that's spoiler territory. I do know that the movies, like, even though I don't remember watching the second movie, I do vaguely know that there is, like, major differences between it and the anime. Granted, I don't know if there's like big differences between the anime and manga storyline wise. I think character wise and maybe some of the stories, but ending wise, I don't know if they changed. I definitely know Death Note, the movie, the original Japanese movie, is very different. So that's kind of interesting. And that's something I'm immediately going off in my brain. I'm wondering what ending they're going to go with. But like, once again, I am actually going into this very positive. I'm very interested in it. It looks very interesting. It is weird seeing it set in a US setting. I'm curious to see what they will do with the setting, whether it'll be like, oh, this takes place in like a major city or something like New York or something, or is it just going to be like, yeah, this takes place somewhere USA. I mean, I assume it's taking place in the US. I mean, everyone's speaking English and everything. Because I don't actually remember like where Death Note took place. Obviously in Japan, but I think specifically maybe it might have been Tokyo. I don't know. I don't remember. Like, that is something I will probably constantly reference in this video. It's been a long time since I've like watched the Death Note anime, so a lot of the details kind of like are not there in my head. Granted, there's like obviously a lot of big points I remember, but not a lot of the finer details, how like certain storylines ended. But it's like overall, like how a lot of the major character stories played out. I remember that, how Death Note ended and stuff like that. That was always a thing. Like, I remember talking about this on forums years ago, and this is me going on a tangent, but I always wanted Death Note to end differently. I might kind of talk about it in a different video, but nevertheless, it's also going to be interesting seeing, from what we see in the trailer, it does seem like they might focus more on the Kira cult side of things, because I feel like obviously Kira had his followers and believers, but I feel like that never was a big thing, at least from what I can remember of the anime. So it's going to be interesting seeing them kind of dive into it. Obviously, like, it's a movie adaptation, so it's going to be a lot more condensed, so it's definitely going to be interesting on that front, like them kind of dive into that more. And it seems like he might have more hands-on with it because he's in the background kind of watching people kind of worship this Kira, like whether they know him as Kira or it's just Kira in general. That's definitely interesting. And also the deaths, I don't remember the deaths in the anime being as like, because more often than not, it was mostly heart attacks he killed people with, but at the same time, it's like obviously, Death Note kind of lets you set up circumstances around someone's death and how specific. So there's other means, like obviously it was presented, like, oh, there are other ways that, you can set up situations for people to die. But from the trailer, it looks very Final Destination. Which isn't a criticism. It's actually fascinating. I'm like, oh, like he's going to make it look more like accidents and stuff like that, which is kind of very interesting approach to it. Once again, I vaguely remember the Japanese movie, so maybe they took a similar approach. There's that, the Death Note itself, its appearance. If you remember from the anime, like, it was just a pristine notebook, which it seems like it looks very much like a notebook in this one, except the pages are kind of worn down. Like, it's almost like it's some ancient text. I thought that was kind of an interesting detail they kind of add in. I would say, again, don't remember the movie, so maybe the Japanese movie did something like that too, but like I do remember that specific from the anime, that it was like a pristine, like, actual notebook, and it had lines and everything in it. At least I think it did. I might be remembering that wrong. Older text. I mean, it is, Shinigami we're dealing with, and it seems like they won't be referring to him as Shinigami. They will be referring to them as death gods when he meets Ryu. I'm also curious about certain other storyline elements, like the Shinigami eyes. Will that kind of pop up in the movie at all? I would think so, because that plays a part. I mean, I think that also is determined by what characters they will include or not. Like, because the first character with Shinigami eyes isn't her name Misa? She was like the first character you see kind of pop up, and the only Shinigami death god you saw in this was Ryuk. So I don't know if Rim's going to pop up or anything. I don't know if the girl that's with him is just a random follower, or she's supposed to represent Misa in this story or not. Some other interesting things too is at least to me, like when it comes to Elle and Light's characters, it seems like their story might be a little bit different in comparison to the anime, like in the sense of like, oh, for one, I feel like Elle was more active in the trailer than I feel like he was in the anime. But I mean, once again, that's probably me misremembering things in a sense of like, I feel like Elle didn't move around a lot. There were occasions, like obviously he went outside and stuff like that, but more often than not, he was always inside most of the time. But you know, that could be, you know, maybe those are just a few times he's actually outside or not. I don't know. Like I don't remember Elle moving around a lot. I do appreciate that there's subtle things that obviously they get the thing down about, you know, his little habits of like how he crouches in chairs, and at one point he's on the phone, you look at him slamming like the phone down or something, and you see like candy scattered all around his desk, you know, Elle having the sweet tooth that he does. But the thing what I was bringing up about Elle and Light's situation is like, obviously Elle, like I'm wondering like how were their circumstances, like how would they meet, because in the anime they met like because Elle met him like at his school. But it was a situation of Elle has his reservations about Light. Like obviously he already kind of broke down like, oh, his thoughts, his deductions on like who Kira was and Kira's background and stuff like that, trying to understand how Kira kills people and stuff like that. And then it's like you take the fact is that it seemed like he was close to Light in this. I mean, obviously as it progressed, him and Light were kind of buddies and stuff like that to a certain extent. Obviously he kept him at a distance and stuff like that, but it seems like immediately from what we can tell in the movie, at least my take of the trailer, it seems like immediately he's like, no, I know who you are, I just can't prove it yet. Which I feel like I don't remember if Elle got that immediately, like definitely not in the anime, because it took time, because there were moments like he had his reservations, but there were moments he actually trusted, like they were kind of friends and stuff like that. So I mean, but it seems like from the trailer, it seems like from the very beginning he's like, I know who you are. But maybe that's just a conversation of like, oh, you support Kira and type of thing, like, you know, maybe it's that type of conversation. I don't know, like I might be taking, you know, huge leaps and liberties about like what was going down and stuff like that. So but to me it seemed like he was already very antagonistic towards Light, and I don't remember him being like that. Once again, not a criticism, it's just a very interesting thing. I'm like, oh, holy crap. I'm sure like I'm doing it a lot in this, but I'm sure everyone's going to do it because that's what you do with these type of things. I'm not, because like I said, I'm going into this very positive. I'm sure there's a lot of people like, oh, it's going to suck, all that adaptation is suck. I feel like Death Note is a series that you can easily get right, because what you need more so than anything, it's a very character driven series as well as like a very philosophy driven series, and I feel like if you nail those points, I feel like you got a good movie, because that's a big part of it, is the suspense and like the drama of trying, it's kind of a cat and mouse game, but at the same time it's a clash of philosophy, and I feel like that's, I talked about this recently because I did a whole video kind of breaking down like Light's character in like a hero or villain type of situation. So it's a thing where it's like, I feel like if you nail that, you don't really, I feel like there's, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like you can't do anything wrong with this. I'm sure there's plenty of people like, oh, you could do this. It's like, no. But I mean, at the very least, I'm going into this very positive. I don't know how most people feel about it. But I mean, at least from the response from the trailer, I didn't just likes and dislike ratio. It seems like a lot of people are more positive about it. But I mean, that was like yesterday I saw it. So I mean, who's to say like that hasn't changed? And another interesting thing about L2 in this is the fact is that he's hiding his face. That was never a thing in the anime. I mean, obviously when him and Light originally like go at each other, it's like over a it's televised, because it's like, you know, he sends out a fake dude to be like, oh yeah, this is me and I'm calling you out. I don't know whether they're gonna do that or not, but at the very least he walks around most of the trailer with his, I mean all of the trailer with his like half his face covered up. And to me I'm like, that's so genius, because a part of the Death Note is when you write a person's name, not only do you need to know their name, you need to have a clear picture of them in your head when you're writing their name. It's like if you don't know what half a person's face looks like, you can use your imagination and stuff, but it doesn't like help. You need a clear-cut picture of what that person looked like. And so if he's walking around with half his face covered, which is something interesting, I'm like, I wonder why Elle never did that. I mean, I guess Elle never felt like he really, well, I mean, like I said, maybe Elle's deductions never led him to think like, I mean, I guess as long as his name was never out there, he was fine, I'd assume, but I don't know. That to me, that's just kind of an interesting layer to add onto it. So, like I said, I'm going into this very positive. It's something I'm actually looking forward to. I'm also curious to see whether or not, I mean, I guess it's determined by whether and how, I mean, a lot of things will be determined like how the movie ends as well as how well it does, whether or not they'll make another one. Because as I said, like the Japanese movie had a sequel, because I know like it roughly, I think the first movie covered like the first couple episodes in the anime, and the second kind of cover the rest of the series. Like I said, in the movies, so they're very like heavily compact version. So I don't know if they'll have this one have a clear-cut ending, or will it kind of be like, oh, stay tuned for the next movie type of thing. Like all this is just conjecture. Like the movie's not even out yet. It doesn't come out till like August. So this is just stuff I'm throwing out there. So my question to you is, how did you feel about the trailer? Are you positive about this? Are you going into this like, oh, you're very hopeful that it will work out, or you're like, nah, they're gonna screw it up? Why? Because everyone else screwed it up. Like, I'm very curious to know your thoughts. Like, obviously, like, what were your thoughts on it? If you've seen the original Japanese movies, what were your thoughts on that compared to the anime or the manga? And do you feel like the Japanese movies already exist, don't do an American adaptation because you won't be able to? Then, like, let me know your thoughts about everything. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.